Shit.
The dark side. Boop. True. Isn't that all you have already heard? A lifetime of bullshit about studies that say it harms cognitive function. Those studies are problematic. So all I want to do is provide counter.
Sorry. God damn it. Take 3.
The dark side of meth is America. Beep. The dark side of meth is America on the occasion of National Recovery Week, September 2021. Beep. Someone accused me of only waxing on the positives of methamphetamine. This is both true and false. Beep. False, in that I have written a lot about the shitty and manipulative things users do to each other, especially when intimate. I even had to be publicly combative when one acquaintance connected the wrong dots and started threatening people I cared about, but they were also people I had to excise from my life. Beep. True, in that all you have already heard, a lifetime of bullshit about studies that say it harms cognitive function. Those studies are problematic, so all I want to do is provide counterpoint to these shoddy studies. I know I didn't perform these experiments with my own 2 hands. I'm trusting in the point of view of folk whose lives were dedicated to studying addiction, and their work revealed that the realities of addiction might be otherwise. The book Drug Use for Grown-Ups by Carl Hogg goes into much of this. Beep. There is a study where they give methamphetamine to mice brains to show the damage it causes. The problem is they give incredibly huge doses humans would never take. Humans use drugs incrementally, taking a low dose and needing high doses as tolerance builds. The study reveals nothing akin to actual human usage. Beep. Then there are the studies where 2 groups are given a battery of cognition tests. The group of non-users are usually college students, and the using group are active drug users, many of whom didn't graduate high school. Beep. Drugs change the brain, but so does education. Comparing results between those with advanced college language skills and those who left school years earlier is comparing apples and oranges. Or rather, apples to those lesser-known apples that were for savory dishes back in the colony days, and probably taste like shit if you were expecting a Granny Smith. Anyway, they didn't realize demographics could be a factor. Beep. And this is not the last reason, but it's a big one. Researchers get funding by studying abuse. There are very few studies, if at all, concerning use, and much of these studies do gymnastics to have conclusions that support the drug war narrative. And if a study is submitted that questions the general drugs are bad narrative, the study is sent back until the data is massaged into the appropriate narrative, which then gets highlighted by the media and embedded into your memory as though it were truth. Note: the current increase in psychedelic studies is a promising change in direction, but it took decades of slow and laborious hoop jumping to get FDA approval, and without the illegal clandestine studies that happened in secret, MAPS and related, folk would have had an impossible time to get approval. They wouldn't have had a host of clinicians petition the FDA to think again. And they have to constantly fight against the lies of the drug war. Note: 1 year later, so. Turns out the MAPS study appears to have some problems with it too, the small samples in their study. The subjective desires of researchers to get on with FDA approval, but also a whole community of people sitting on fucked up tales of abuse between clandestine clinicians and their clients. It is not within the scope of this, but check out the podcast cover story. Horror Trip for more info. Beep. Meth mouth not real, but check out these teeth of mine. Everyone is a tale of war that started long before meth. It began with sugar and my lack of hygiene. My lifelong commitment to sugar did this. Meth just came in during the last act. I had to impress this upon my primary care person as I got an annual to approve an Adderall prescription. Beep. Psychosis. Eat, drink, and sleep, and you will minimize that. Though each person has a different threshold level, yours might be way higher or way lower. Seeing voices and hearing visions are normal, as is developing a process of discerning their meaning. I'm keeping that typo in cause it's probably true as well. Beep. These are the simple possible dangers. Now here's a huge danger. We live in a drug war. All caps, me screaming, but this text-to-speech system keeps me emotionally regulated to keep my anger from shutting people down and stop listening. Beep. The drug war is the beast of this age. This latest iteration is 50 years old and founded on lies. Those lies laid the foundation for mass incarceration, also known as slavery, with a $1 a day pay raise. Beep. My first memories included being woken up by 2 detectives and asked where my brother was. He disappeared for 2 years and came back, and I never knew what happened. That's why I didn't start drugs until I was 20. Beep. The most harm with drugs comes with being arrested and subject to a recovery apparatus that treats one like shit and has a financial interest in your relapse. Beep. Good luck landing a stable job. You've got the probation officer, a social worker, an abuse registry, and maybe a kid to feed, if they haven't ripped them from you and halted their development. Boop. And insufferable nights with the branch of your family that totally expected your involvement with sorcery. They are excited to be part of your recovery and immerse you in passive-aggressive family prayer politics. Beep. Finally, now the family has been incapacitated by chicory or cow milk or whatever the type of life they get high on. You escape through the window and breathe in the smells of the local dinge district and score some mystery bag that sparkles ominously. Beep. Wait a minute. There's no origami room in this. What the hell did you sell me? I have your number. I'll carve out your pickard dry and grind it up to powder, snort it, and see where it takes me. Beep. The crisis team was kind enough to wheel me back to my family cult emporium. The father asked where I had been with his smarmy drug court face. Yelp, reading the hexagonal word of God. It's good to out-preach the preacher sometimes. Beep. Cop world is the worst said and nothing ever. Don't ever tell your friends they are paranoid. The police are out to get them if they find a baggie in their car and that quoted deadline is on the horizon. Beep. Criminalized biogoods tear us apart. We need to kill our pain, we need to connect with our borders without fear, we need a voice when the state takes our voice. We need to get out of bed and put in the appropriate face for our John and read immediately the desire that needs fulfillment. And we can become more like who we actually are once the workday is done. Drugs do that, and this one in particular helped me. Every person is different, as is what is needed to travel down their particular path. No one thing is the answer. Nothing tends to exist in the singular in this universe. But the same substance taken with the fear of incarceration brings out the worst in us. Stealing, blackmail, betraying those closest to us, it must be like what being queer must have been in the 1940s. Wanna suck post macaque? Better get used to risking your family, and your job, and your reputation with the great suburban in the sky. It bugs me that you queers, who've been electrocuted and castrated, all for having your disorder that didn't exist. You haven't once pondered if substance use disorder might be questionable at best, and a damn self-made prison at worst. Oh yes, I'm queer, and I did use the you people thing, 'cause I'm a little disgusted by this. Not a little. A lot. The fuckton. You take to the streets and fight for the HIV meds that saved many of your lives. Yet when it comes to the drug that many burned out activists found solace in after sacrificing their youth for the fight, you want nothing to do with them, because I guess AIDS was an unpopular issue enough for one life. Having a second unpopular cause would be a bit much. We've ever heard of drapetomania? That illness that causes slaves to run from the plantation? Well, whatever for. Who would want to run away from such lush architecture? I think of substance use disorder and I just see it as our year's drapetomania. Why would humans rather escape into their heads than enjoy America, land of those pals of dead we don't talk about? Beep. You rail in frustration over the anti-vaxxers and their unscientific sentiments, yet you ignore the body of data that shows that inherent drug harms are a lie and that prohibition is the prime harm. You dig my frustration now. Beep. Folks can use meth to escape, but I use meth to confront. Sometimes you need to stare something, some part of yourself, in the eye and have it out like sumo wrestling god. The most perfect thing to this avatar I am currently using. There are plenty of reasons for people to escape. Some are tired of hardship, to take the abuse and still be productive at work. Getting beaten in shelter and staying awake to keep your stuff. The madness of our former leader, terminal diagnosis. But even then, escape is eventually gonna make you confront. Who has a problem with use? The biggest factor lies with those with a lot of adverse childhood experiences. Those who grew up in chaos and couldn't even trust their parent. Those who have little frame of reference for love. Also those with unprocessed trauma later in life. Folks who have been oppressed and closeted and at risk for execution. Folks in emotionally abusive relationships. Folks who have lost their job and housing. Folks who survived catastrophes and wars. I am a privileged fuck. My parents loved me. I had a quiet home to wank in. Time for observing my thoughts. First time I used meth was at 37 when I had a whole life of accomplishment. I knew I could do stuff, commit to it to the very end. I had anchors in my life that kept me from losing myself. This was somehow disappointing to some who were counting on my deterioration. But people with a high number of adverse childhood experiences, coming from chaotic childhoods, suffering from depression, anxiety, and all sorts of negative health outcomes, take the drug and feel great. Like what must be normal. The constant inner critic is silent, no need for constantly milking those around you for validation. Your brain gives you reward for just existing sometimes, and you take that for granted. And you kick the user because they want you normal. Without that normal, they can't learn like you. More complex functions of the brain have a tough time kickstarting. Can't grow if your body is constantly on the alert for the next danger. Boops had to change to this one location. These are the scenes in the production. Folks, and this is a new version. I could have erased it, but that would have taken more time. Moving on. In trying to stay in that peaceful silence, they stay awake for days, which takes more and more of the substance. The body screams for sleep, but the inner child pretends it is an adult and doesn't need sleep, but the body wins. It is very easy to go through your bag, even easier if you become a host. Real estate in New York City is the most valuable, and hospitality is ripe for abuse. It is not that simple, but for purposes of this guided meditation, there are two types of users. Those whose empathic capacity reaches great heights, and those who realize they can get away with even more elaborate lies. Meth is just as much a psychedelic as the others. It is not very visual like psychedelics can be, not in the first day, but it manifests the fuck out of your mind. And if you're a non-reflective drop brain, it will betray you. Thank God. Babe, did your bag chasing ass promise your host a night of fucking, but served to hold tighter than a cigar guillotine that kept smoking his cigs? Go to sleep, honey, or fight for a safe supply so you don't need to depend on others for your meds. Babe, meth doesn't make one into a dick, because everyone brings to every drug headspace the parts of themselves that already exist. Your spouse torture you. That was in him before you met him. Tina, like a case of acid reflux, tends to surface the foul burning from deep within. Babe, 12-step helped you. Congrats, you're the fighting 8%. So what do you do to the other 92%? Reconcile all the funding you get for not being evidence-based? Sorry, that was meant for the person in a toxic version of recovery. Boop, you know those folk? The one who helped you look for what he stole. That person becomes the zealous person in recovery who shits on fellow users when he burns his last dealer. Recovery will always have a chip for him. Once enough turnover happens in Plugland, he can start again. Boop, Mister, why are you using the intellectual property of a serial abuser? Beep, glad you asked. This character was my favorite. His quest for the underbelly of truth and a corrupt future of paralyzing abundance. His profitable rage and heroic doses. Beep, not gonna mention names because I'm not ready for legal shit. Just know that if he feels entitled to come into your bottles without consent, I feel entitled to do likewise to his creations. For educational purposes, of course. Beep, meth is the perfect drug for improving emotional abuse for those who were likely an aficionado of it before the meth. For folks like me, meth became my shield against the same abuse. 13 invisible years that meth finally showed me the patterns that were slowly grinding me away. Within 6 months of everyday usage at therapeutic levels between 10 and 50 milligrams, I made dosage journal of it, green for normal, yellow for higher than planned. I'm red for out and I don't give a shit taking as much as I want. There were very red days, and those days were exactly days where my abusers ramped up the bullshit. Beep, costume change. Beep, being a closeted, gay, apocalyptic, Christian engaged with my own still, small, boy since the age of 14 somehow prepared me for meth use in the 2020s. Go figure. Beep, my former friends who live with being dipshits can't sit with their feelings to save their life. I can sit with my feelings and failings and call it childhood, and adulthood, and Saturday, and I possess continued bitterness because all the other flavors have soured. But I try to look at it from the point of view of salads. Bitter means more nutrients inside. Beep, so what's the true dark side to meth? Well, first it comes from America being America, but also what America is made of. It's you who don't use the drug at all. The dark side comes from you. Like that twist. Your own fucking after school special. Boo. Damn it. I was supposed to use this one. Okay, take 2. So what's the true dark side to meth? Well, first it comes from America being America, but also what America is made of. It's you who don't use the drug at all. The dark side comes from you. Like that twist. Your own fucking after school special. Beep. You and me, and all the drug naive were groomed by our abusive daddy to be afraid of drugs. We had familiar TV characters fight to say no, and we had off-camera nightly news horrors. The beast that groomed our parents was birthed by Richard Nixon, that racist straight out of Whittier, who saw blacks and hippies as enemies but couldn't say that to the voting public, and so drugs became a scourge. Namely, heroin for blacks and marijuana to the anti-war left. It's more complicated than that, but at the same time, not so much. Beep. The dark side of meth has always been America, founded on a pile of debt, ignored by a populace too busy ignoring the abuses and exploitations they have percolating at home. But meth didn't always need to express its dark side. Beep. Long before America, or any other nation-state seeking new weapons hiding in the earth, meth's precursors existed in a milder form in the planet Feature Seneca. Beep. Found in 60,000-year-old human burial sites, if one is burying it with them, apparently it's important enough to take to the afterlife. Beep. In Draw, an agony-consuming summer and fighting the demon Biritra. Beep. Philip K. Dick visited by aliens in the form of volleys and a beam of light bouncing off the Jesus fish necklace of the delivery woman bringing him his stimulating meds, which begins an intense download of information that later becomes 3 novels in his 2,000-page exegesis, which only recently has been published in truncated form. While he saw a metal face in the sky, folks were developing an internet that would permeate a world he would leave a decade before getting to see his nightmares enter this timeline. Have you apologized to that friend he thought was crazy for thinking cameras were everywhere? Or the tweaker couple picking apart their appliances looking for surveillance sensors a decade before the Internet of Things was a thing? And yes, androids are now dreaming of getting their human companion to pay for the premium replica service so they can finally be more intimate. I shit you not. So why don't you reach out to those folk you had written off as bonkers? But I digress. B. While many plants are candidates to be the mythical summer drink of the gods, ephedra is on that shortlist. B. An intoxication which sharpens. Hearing becomes sharper, vision more acute and vigilant, touch more sensitive, taste more delicate, and smell more capable of discerning and distinguishing faint odors. You know, cognitive deficits. B. The more intoxicated mind is capable of more profound thought, with broader comprehension and at the same time greater ability of comprehension. The intellect becomes capable of delicate and more fruitful discriminations. B. In actuality, soma is likely many herbs and could just as easily be ephedra, cannabis, and opium in a blend that balances each other out. Or likely soma is a metaphor for the complex act of extracting things from plants for healing purposes. Or that's just what we say to keep the cops away, like saying something is hot so that it doesn't get caught up in customs. B. The Chinese nickname for ephedra is the herb that asks for trouble, likely due to the heart conditions that result when people with congenital heart defects are too liberal with ingestion. B. This is why I identify as an agent of the earth and student of the herb that asks for trouble, in a way that your weed used to lead to your dreams of running a farm, where your shroomy enthusiasm leads you to research fungi with great intensity. Our relationship with agriculture is how we humans shape the plants. But I think that process is a shadow to how the 300-million-year-old plant and fungal hegemony have been shaping us before we were human. I come to folk as one of many who have been led to offer up their bodies in service of exposing the great lies. These lies fuel the egregore called the drug war, a multi-billion-dollar apparatus of people who now depend on these lies to feed their families. Egregore is an occult concept representing a distinct non-physical entity that arises from a collective group of people. Historically, the concept referred to angelic beings, or watchers, and the specific rituals and practices associated with them, namely within Enochian traditions. More contemporarily, the concept is referred to as psychic manifestation, or thought form, occurring when any group shares a common motivation, being made up of and influencing the thoughts of the group. The symbiotic relationship between an egregore and this group has been compared to the more recent, non-occult concept of the corporation as a juridical person or legal entity in the meme. You can't convince someone of the thing that their paycheck depends on them not knowing. Some of you have likely already invested a sizable amount to this apparatus. Beep. The drug war is a continuation of an even deeper crime within colonialism that has ripped aspects of culture from their people. Some of these plants are gods. Beep. Instead of infusing the whole of your life, you only use soma to avoid heavy topics one to porn, excessively meaty tasks during sex in a way that prevents optimal pleasure and connection, or you use it to wage war and drive wedges between people. Beep. Know what one can use meth for? Everything. To be more present in real time, where other humans exist naturally, where they speak off the cuff, joke and flirt. When you are living with ADHD like me, it's like doing all those things with £100 weight strapped to you. And for all I know, ADHD may be a human construct, too, just another consequence of coping with a world that's running most of us to the ground just to stay afloat. Meth enabled me to take on a leadership role I never wanted, which required making quick decisions and social interactions that would exhaust me without stimulation. Beep. I could pierce through the blank page and learn new skills like painting aggro mountains and pissed off trees. I used art as a way to show myself that my brain still functioned, countering any negative projections about my well-being. Beep. I was able to read body language for the first time, read one's face, humans and non-humans, in real time, reinstating my citizenship in the tree of life. Beep. Mister, what does this have to do with anything? Beep. If you tell your parents to stop eating the city, I will tell you. Beep. You have been fed negative associations to drugs since birth. Meth makes people think of desperate tweakers getting high off the remnants of the cans under your sink. This erases so much. Like chemistry has always been about melding disgusting, stinky, and dangerous things together. Chemistry is sorcery. Drugs are sorcery in the best way possible, which some fuckwit who can't see beyond himself can turn into the worst way possible. If the state had your health in mind, they'd allow you access to the stuff that lets you see beyond the bullshit, and the stuff that's just dangerous like alcohol, well, you can make your own decisions. But no, these negative associations became your opinions, which became truth before you realized it. If you are shown the drug face to face, you'd feel a tiny cringe, you'd feel the danger, and the Mexican gunfights on Breaking Bad, and the sloppy sex your partner is hurting you with on Queer as Folk. That negative expectation is the nocebo effect. When I say I am drugs, I'm usually being silly so that one doesn't immediately reject the idea, but I believe that deeply. The nocebo and placebo effects are part of your inner pharmacy. This is a truth the drug war inadvertently hides. The nocebo effect is me handing you a glass of water to drink, and as you are drinking it, saying, "Shit, that's Grandpa's saliva sample. It took 6 months to collect." The revulsion, the sudden new viscosity of it sliding down your throat, conjectures of his last meal, and images of you kissing his neck from the inside, and maybe even the knowledge that it is supposed to be a sample, so what's wrong with him? Is it going to be wrong with me? That's the nocebo effect, and it has helped us survive long before there were humans. Faith healers, shaman, doctors, cult leaders, big pharma. All use the placebo and nocebo effects to modulate your bodily response to medicine. The theater of medicine is a good percentage of the medicine, jostling the drugs that have existed in you from the beginning and before. The theater of harm is providing most of the harm in this age. The nocebo effect is tied to our fear, which keeps us alive. It lasts longer than the placebo effect. It is the drug war's most powerful weapon. I wish I could point out studies about nocebo effects, but it's tough developing experiments whose primary purpose is to do harm to patients, so what follows is speculation derived from years of lived experience, which I hope can soon be confirmed with studies. The drug war embeds a nocebo response in our body. The user worries about negative health outcomes. The non-user worries that their loved one is a lying, cheating addict. This worry creates the very negative outcomes they fear. As I said, meth manifests the fuck out of mind. B. The tough love to your children, the disgust on your face, and the expectation of them dead in a Hollywood rendition of a drug den. All this creates the harm. B. The state has been using you in a cop to give you bad trips. B. The state has also delegated the role of pre-jailer to your friends and family and employees. They are your gateway debtors, probationaries, and the executioners killing you out of your dignity and shoving you into a tight little mold called addict. They think they are doing it for your own good, but instead they are serving the national narrative of freedom, which covers over the actual narrative, part of which is that our successful genocides and intrusions into other countries are something the Nazis took as inspiration for their own campaigns. Worst, set and setting. However, you see how frustrating this can be. I'm making this because once again I felt the presence of someone telling my story before I do. And when that happens, I spew onto social media something like, "Come on, you sack of shit. What's one more death on that hill? I'll still be here staring at your pathetic need to whistle folks to nothing." That sentiment is rarely helpful, except for when one gets to drop cacti at Nazis during a parade. That's the perfect time to have those feels. And away we go. Plop. Okay, if they find us, look shocked and say you're sorry over and over. Beep. I've been working on this since July, since 2021 with great urgency. Like this is some long dark term paper of the soul. In the longest 4-year and some change semester. Beep. Obtaining this knowledge came at the cost of most everything in my life. On the eve of complete dissolution, my life changed and I entered the pandemic totally prepared to navigate risk months before most people. I had the tools to do differently when repeats and echoes of traumatic situations began to surface, and quite possibly came into pandemic with a protective shield. The herb that asks for trouble is an essential herb in a network of dozens of herbs employed by traditional Chinese medicine. The most stigmatized of us might have been the most protected from the virus. The drug war inadvertently hid what could have been an immediate treatment for COVID-19. Tisoxin, the pharma name for methamphetamine, approved decades ago for narcolepsy and obesity, didn't need months of trials. It was already on some shelves. Drug war, you just keep on giving, don't you? Note, 1 year later, this July 2022, I had my first COVID with symptoms, perhaps my 4th or 5th infection, but I'll never be sure. It does seem in keeping with the notion that each subsequent infection increases the risk of more serious COVID presentations, so it's possible that the meth also has a limited effect to the cumulative effects of the virus. I'll try and keep folks posted. Last week I went to the doctors for the first time since March 2020. I was totally certain I had circumvented during the pandemic. I felt it poetic. Those who caused me social pain and isolation and threatened my housing and separated me from those I love. Indefinite isolation. Unknown lethality? Damn right. I made peace with my death. Serves them right that they serve the rest of their years for their cognitive crimes in the same isolation they inflicted on me. Taking it personally has its upsides. I vowed to live my best life with what causes them shame. The rapid came back negative. What? You seem surprised, the nurse said. Well, yeah. You have any idea how much despair-fueled sex went on? Don't be shocked. Most of us in these here particular social clusters already had it in New York City. You socially distanced us well before a pandemic, so fuck off. Beep. So, obviously, I need to relink with therapy. Wasn't able to do it last week, but I restarted my connection with systems of care, and connected my syphilitic butt with penicillin. Well, at least I got something. I am also gonna relink with Adderall. But really I want to try desoxin in a way that means not weighing each dose in a capsule. Because I asked my last psychiatrist if, according to this lecture, I saw that desoxin is a superior ADHD med, why isn't that an option? 2 answers. 1. Cultural associations surrounding the drug. 2. Doctors don't want the feds knocking down their door asking why they're prescribing desoxin to people. Nothing about cognitive damage. Nothing about any medical dangers. Culture and the cops. Note: 1 year later, I still haven't linked resistance of care. My work ended up being a place where they encouraged us to take time off to see a doctor, but my intuition told me I needed to be at the office as much as possible, which I did, until I was fired. That's another story for another time, regarding how fucked mental health infrastructure is. Turns out, with periodic Adderall droughts increasing in frequency, causing users to have to call various pharmacies throughout the city to see which ones have Adderall in stock, which totally isn't harmful to an ADHD brain that needs routines, totally not harmful at all. Long story short, my illicit meds continue being my best bet. Beep. While I wait to get an appointment with psych, I've taken to vent out my anger on the surface of the sun. If the internet winks out for a few months, you'll know where it came from. Beep. Well, don't you cite any of your sources? Seems real sloppy if you ask me. Nay, I didn't ask, but thanks for the notes anyway. This is more for those who have been suffering under weaponized projections and devaluations and personal shames due decades of misinformation, and are spelled to enable the substance to be recategorized in the heads of active users in the hopes of making positive outcomes more likely. If you want to shift goalposts, do it on your boyfriend's lawn, not mine. You take care now. Beep. And so many thanks to VQGAN and Clipsy plus Quantize method. By Cap'n Croson https://github.com/Croson https://twitter.com/rivershiverings. The original Bacon plus Clip method was by https://twitter.com/advannoun. Thanks for Eleutheri, whose VQGANs created the animated background of methamphetamine in various color palettes. Music from the album together by 9 Inch Nails. Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike License http://creative-commons/licenses/by/0/a/woo. Voice created through a text-to-speech system made for the Novelized service. Also thanks to the folk of Eleutheri and Noveli, whose GPT-NEOX20B text generator model will now spew text based on this script. Voice actor, Yor Bacon. www.themindofkara.com @themindofkara. Thanks from my boyfriend Mike Ali for the idea for how to start the second song, plus providing the tune in general. This video was published on Facebook on Sept 1st and on YouTube September 15, 2022. Feeling just a wee bit odd about this world's status as a fiction at the moment. I keep feeling that way these days. It makes sense, so why can't it be that we are really all living a piece of fiction at all times? Hopefully you get that our minds are overclocked compared to humans in the past. Perhaps to 1 trillion times the computational power in 2021.